how these Iranian units fielded more dangerous fighters than any other air force, including the US and USSR. Iran emerged as a leading client for top-end American and British armaments during that decade. This not only provided a major boon to Western defense industries, but also placed further pressure on the defenses of NATO adversaries as Iranian offensive capabilities grew significantly. Although this would have wide-ranging impacts on Iranian military power, from its fleet of cutting-edge tankers for aerial refueling to its British Chieftain tank units that outnumbered those of the British Army itself, perhaps the most notable asset Iran came to field was the F-14 Tomcat heavyweight fighter. The Tomcat was the first fighter of the fourth generation to enter service anywhere in the world, and the first of its generation ever exported, with Iran being the only client due largely to its extreme cost. The F-14 was by far the largest and heaviest fighter in the world, and would remain so for several decades, which allowed it to retain a much longer range and carry oversized sensors and missiles for a tremendous combat potential. The result was an aircraft with very high operational costs, which no air force other than that of Iran was willing to finance, with Britain finding it unaffordable, and even the US Air National Guard, which evaluated it to be the best suited to protecting the American mainland, forced to rely on the smaller and much cheaper F-15 due to cost constraints. Deliveries of the F-14 made Iran the second operator of fourth-generation fighters after the US military, with the US Navy fielding F-14 seconds from 1974, and the Air Force fielding the F-15 from the following year just months before the first F-14 seconds reached Iran. The Tomcat's capability advantages over its rivals primarily centered around its sensor suite and missiles, with a level of situational awareness in a league of its own and rivaled only by the Soviet MiG-31 interceptor that became operational in 1981. The AIM-54 Phoenix missile was the first, and for close to 20 years the only one in the world with fire-and-forget capabilities due to its active radar guidance, which combined with a very large warhead, Mach 5 speed and extreme 190 km range, making it entirely unrivaled. The missile was too heavy to be employed by other aircraft, which nevertheless lacked sensors powerful enough to make effective use of it. To place the AIM-54 capabilities in perspective, the F-15 AIM-7 missile needed to be guided throughout its course by the fighter's radar due to its poorer guidance system, and could only engage up to 70 kilometers away or just over one-third of the range. With 79 F-14 split between two units based at Isfahan and Shiraz, there was little doubt that the Iranian Air Force had a more capable fighter class than any other air force in the world, rivaled only by the US Navy's own F-14. While the F-15 would struggle against Soviet Su-27, MiG-31 and even older MiG-25 jets, the F-14 capabilities, particularly for enhanced US Navy variants from the 1980s and early 90s, would not have any near-peer challenges into the 21st century domestically or abroad, albeit partly due to competing Soviet programs such as the MiG-31M being terminated in the 1990s. The Iranian F-14 fleet demonstrated its advanced capabilities during the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 88, when the jets were made priority targets for Iraqi strikes during the war's opening hours. Iraqi Tu-16 bombers, not designed for low-altitude bombing, targeted Isfahan airfield housing 39 F-14 but failed to destroy any runways or any of the fighters themselves, while four longer-ranged Iraqi Tu-22 targeted Shiraz Air Base, where the remaining Tomcats were based, and similarly failed to destroy any. Although Iranian forces were overwhelmingly outmatched on land by Iraq's Soviet-supplied tanks, and in the air its older F-4 and F-5 fighters lost the war's initial engagements to Iraqi MiG-21, the F-14 deployment provided a much-needed boost. The fighter's first kill, gained using the AIM-54 missile, was achieved on September 10, 1980, neutralizing an Iraqi Su-22 variable swept-wing strike fighter. This came as a surprise to the Iraqi military, which had assessed the F-14 were out of service, and would have enjoyed a significant advantage in the air otherwise. Iraq lacked any fourth-generation fighters or interceptors of its own, and while its top combat jet, the MiG-25, would later prove more than capable of tackling F-15 seconds flown by the U.S. Air Force. Against the F-14, every Iraqi asset was far outmatched. While the first engagement between the MiG-25 and F-14 on February 15, 1982, saw both damage the other, but neither beyond repair. The AIM-54 single-S unique capabilities paired with the Tomcat's sensors made it the only fighter in the world capable of reliably neutralizing MiG-25 seconds with an estimated 6 shot down during the war.